Level up your LA Kings experience with the new Vivid Seats Elite Seats. All the on-ice Kings action with even more exclusive access. Enjoy great seats to the game along with premier dining inside the Lexus Club with all-you-can-eat food and non-alcoholic beverages. Plus, get a free Team LA Kings item and parking with your purchase. Score your Vivid Seats Elite Seats tickets today and earn rewards on each purchase from the only ticket company that rewards you for buying. Experience it live with Vivid Seats, the official partner of the LA Kings.
You're listening to an LA Kings podcast. For more episodes of this and every other Kings program, visit lakings.com/podcast.
You're listening to All the Kings Men, the official podcast of the LA Kings. Now, here's your host, Jesse Cohen.
Welcome back, Kings fans. I am Jesse Cohen. This is All the Kings Men. We're in that part of the summer where real hockey is right around the corner. The Rookie Showcase is set to be played from September 13th through the 16th. Then training camp opens, then the preseason begins, and before you know it, we will be in the thick of the 2024-25 season. But none of those dominoes start to fall for another 3 weeks. So while the dog days of summer are technically over, we've got some real dog days type episodes coming up for you. To start off, my dad joins me for today's episode, and we're revisiting an episode that we recorded back in 2017. Reacting to the Hockey News' Top 50 Kings of All Time list back in 2016-17 in celebration of the 100th anniversary of the National Hockey League. There was a ton of Top 50, Top 100 all-time type content. In November of 2017, my dad and I went through the list of Top 50 Kings, and for reasons I will explain in this episode, we revisited it this summer. Joining me today, all the way from the crime-filled, gang-infested, graffiti-ridden burg of Bluffton, South Carolina, is my dad. How are you doing today, Dad?
I'm good. I don't think that's accurate.
No, I'm pretty sure it is.
But it is Bluffton.
Yeah. So I asked you to do this episode with me about a few days ago.
Yeah.
It's an episode that I've been thinking about doing since early last season because Anze Kopitar passed a bunch of franchise, milestones over the in the 23-24 season.
Right.
And I remembered that we had done this, which was ranking the top 50 Kings of all time. We did it back in November of 2017.
I know. I can't believe it's that long ago.
I know. So I wasn't going to go back and listen to the episode, but I thought, no, I remember there was a lot of weird stuff about it. So I went back, I listened to it, and I just want to sort of walk you through what I remembered as a result of listening to it and walk the listeners through, because this is going to be a complicated process, more complicated than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
So back in 2017, I bought a copy of the Hockey News Top 50 Players of All Time by franchise, like a physical copy of an actual magazine, which seems even crazier today than it did in 2017. And I don't have that copy anymore, or maybe I do. I don't know. I lost track of it. But I had marked it up so much in the course of our conversation. I'd made notes and crossed names out and put asterisks and, just destroyed it. So about a year ago, I just went online and found another copy of it and bought a new one.
Oh,
good
for you.
So I have the magazine out in front of me. And as I was listening to the old episode, I was sort of impressed at how much research I had done. Because I was like, oh, Bob Nevin did this and Mike Corrigan did that. And I was like, I don't know who those people are. And then I heard myself flipping the pages on the recording and I realized, oh, I'm just reading straight from the...
Right.
Straight. When I say, Mark Hardy was a number one defenseman averaging 25 minutes during this first 500-game stint when the team made the playoffs 6 times, I was like, wow, that's really good recall. And then I was like, no, I'm just reading it straight from the magazine. So I've got my notes from last time, not the handwritten notes, but notes I made on the re-listen. I've got the magazine, and then I've got a couple notes that I jotted down myself. And I don't know if you remember the process that we came up with last time, but we took the bottom 25. I added some names. I broke the bottom 25 into groups of 5, gave you 6 names at a time, and asked you to identify which name I had added that wasn't on the original list.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And then in the top 25, we just sort of went through. Because once you reach the top 25, there's no sort of point in messing around.
So
So go ahead.
It's funny. My memory is that it was the 50 most important franchise people.
Well,
like,
it just
not
says
the
top
best.
50. It doesn't really define what
Oh.
you know.
I thought that's how we. My memory.
That is
and
how
Malone-
we did it.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
Because I remember I put anyway, Dustin Brown at number 1.
Well, see, that is my memory, but no. Going back and listening to it this morning, we both had Robitaille number 1.
Okay, well, that's so funny because even this morning I was thinking, maybe there would be a 1A and 1B, and it would be Robitaille and Brown, because Robitaille is probably the most important player in franchise history.
Well, you want to hear something totally insane?
Yeah.
Here's the top 4 that we came up with in 2017. Robitaille, Dion, Rob Blake, and Dave Taylor.
No, that's not right.
I agree. But that I was
I-
listening back to the recording, and we were so in agreement and so sure that was the top 4. And listening to it now, I'm stunned. I'm like, how is that? How did we both
because
agree on that?
my memory is really absolutely specifically that Dustin Brown should be number 1.
I have the same memory.
Maybe there was another episode.
There must have been, because I remember not agreeing with you, but then you talking me into it.
Sure.
So I'm listening to it again, like 2 hours ago. I listened to it, and Robitaille, Dion, Blake, Taylor, Brown, Kopitar, Gretzky, Doughty, Quick, and Vachon was our top 10. And I got to tell you, I made my own list before going back and listening to it. Mostly the same names, totally different order.
Yeah, that either we did a completely different
I think we must have at some point.
episode, because my memory now. Look, I go 7 years ago. I can't remember 7 days
Sure.
ago, but my memory is that it was the 50 sort of most important, like the franchise players, and that's why I put Brown first. Although Robitaille, probably could be first. Forever, I guess.
So the cover of the magazine just says top 50 players of all time. And Ken Campbell, I think, wrote the list, although the last time we did this, as I was listening to it, I couldn't sort out that it was Ken Campbell. The list has Gretzky at number 1, and I think you and we agreed then. I suspect we agree now that that's just silly.
Yeah, no, I see the list. And, that's why I was like, well, okay, Gretzky's okay. I mean, yes, I guess if you say he was the greatest player of all time, which I'm not sure I'm on board, but then, okay, he has to be number 1. But if we're talking about the franchise players, then no, he's not number 1. And now here's the thing I was thinking today. One of the problems with these kinds of things is, we didn't even move here until,
Yes.
I didn't move permanently until the summer of '83. We first came in '82, but then I had to go back to Toronto to work. But so we missed the first 17, 16 years, and there was no coverage of the Kings in Toronto.
And to be honest, even though we were here in the 80s, like, I don't remember the 80s.
No, I mean, I think Jeff and I went to the odd game until we started splitting with that guy's season tickets, I think in 86, 87. So at that point on, but even then, I couldn't necessarily tell you until Gretzky got traded. I remember.
Well, one of the conversations I thought was interesting was Mark Hardy, because he's on the list. And I was like, really? Mark Hardy? Like, I barely remember him. And because I was thinking of the 92-93 Cup run, where he played 11 regular season games and 15 playoff games. And then it's okay, he was a Phoenix Road Runner. He was a Long Beach Ice Dog. So it's like he was around. I sort of remember him, but like, meh. But then he played from 80 to 88 on the Kings. And I don't remember any of that.
No, I don't remember much of it. But he's one of those guys that straddles our Kings existence. And so I think, given his record, he deserves to be on this list in the top 25. The only person I'm looking to the list and like forgetting the order, the only person that I'm not 100% sure that I would put in the top 25 anyway is Vishnofsky, which is not to say he wasn't very, very good.
So that's funny because listening back to the replay, we were sort of, at least I introduced the idea that maybe he was top 20, but we wound up rejecting it. So anyway, let's dive into it. Right. I'm not going to do it the same way we did last time because I just didn't put as much thought into it. But I'm going to read some names that came up in our conversation 7 years ago that didn't make the list, but these are sort of honorable mentions, if you will.
All right.
Jason Allison, Jamie Storr, Mike Richards, and Adam Deadmarsh.
Yeah, I got those on my in list right now.
You were the most, 7 years ago, you were the most bullish about Adam Deadmarsh.
Yeah.
But ultimately we ruled him out because he's so highly ranked on Colorado's list, and he just didn't play that long in LA.
Yes, that makes sense. So it just depends what is the list about.
Yeah. Well, so we'll get into the list in a second. Mike Richards, we decided because you never liked Mike Richards, and he only played here for 3 years, less than 3 years, parts of 3 seasons.
I have not changed my mind whether I liked him. I've changed my mind whether or not he should be on this list.
All right. Well, I'm going to add him to a secondary list because I think you called me yesterday and we briefly talked about some other names, and I think there are going to have to be special dispensations. I had added in the final in the thing where I did 5 names at a time. I would give you 5 real names and 1 fake name, and 45 through 50, the fake name I gave you was Jamie Storr. And we initially added Jamie Storr at the expense of Mike Camilleri.
Sure.
But then we added other people, and Jamie Storr wound up getting bumped.
Part of the problem is, of course, like we say, you weren't even born for some of it.
Yeah.
But, I wasn't following the Kings. But, for instance, I do know Bob Nevin because Bob Nevin played for the Leafs when I was in Toronto. That's the trouble with these lists when you have to look back in history, right?
Yeah.
Like, who is the greatest boxer of all time? Well, I never saw Jersey Joe Walcott. And I never saw Jack Johnson.
And also, you talk about, when I was growing up, you would always talk to me about the British invasion, right, of music. Like, I don't know, what's your friend Peter Noon? He was in some band. Herman's Hermits, right.
Hermits.
Yeah, Herman's Hermits doesn't mean anything to me or anybody listening to this under the age of 50 probably.
You don't know Mrs. Brown, You've Got a Lovely Daughter?
No, but I'm sure if we made this list 20 years ago, they would have ranked much higher. But now bands like Blur and Oasis and whatever other British pop bands, moving them down the list.
And that's right, exactly. So I would take off now Eddie Joyal. I know the name, and I think he was an important original king, maybe.
Yeah.
So, but I say Nevin, Corrigan. Sorry, Camilleri and Modry. I take Tom Williams.
Yeah.
They're gone as far as I'm concerned. I don't even think Gary Galley, I know he had a good career and I know he came back, but I put Mikey Anderson, there's some people that just get knocked off any list.
Mikey Anderson's interesting. So before we dive into the list, let me finish reading off some other lists. All
right.
So I had Storr, Allison, Richards, and Deadmarsh. I'm going to argue that Storr and Allison don't make the list at all.
Okay.
But they're worth mentioning because they were here.
Yes. Yeah. I agree.
We wound up adding last time, and I think we will again this time, Matt Green, Trevor Lewis, and Felix Potvin, although I could be talked out of Felix Potvin.
I'll think about that one, but
then I gave you a list of some guys that I wouldn't put on the list today, but if we did this list again in 7 more years, Quentin Byfield, Mikey Anderson, I don't remember who else I put on the list. Those guys are are candidates to be added someday.
Well, and I said I wouldn't put Byfield yet because he's only played
had one good year.
Yeah, and look, I think someday he will be, but who knows, right? He could get hurt and never play again, or get traded. Or,
who knows?
Yeah, and so you never know. But Mikey Anderson now has played for, a good number of years.
I'm no disrespect to Mikey Anderson, who I really do enjoy watching play. I like that style of defensive game. He's less than 270 games. That's not enough for me.
Oh, okay.
That's just for me. And I really like him, but top 50, because we're going to get into some of these names.
Yeah. All right. So I take out Nevin, Corrigan, Camilleri, Modry, Galley, Tom Williams. How many is that?
1,
6,
2,
7?
3, 4, 5, 6, I think.
Okay, and I think there's people like Zhitnik, Todor. First of all, I have definitely put in.
We're not putting Zhitnik on the list.
I definitely put in Matt Green.
Yes, 100%.
Trevor Lewis.
Yeah.
I put in Dwight King and Jordan Nolan because I think they were crucial to winning the Cup.
I am okay with Dwight King. No disrespect to Jordan Nolan. I would not include him. The one player that I did want to include that you may disagree with me on is Adrian Kempe. Because when we did this 7 years ago, he was, a rookie maybe?
Yeah. No, I would put in...
Since then, he's 17th in points, 14th in games played, 15th in goals, and 19th assists in franchise history. And he'll be here for at least 2 more years, I'm guessing.
So there's a couple of people up the list that I'm still willing to take out.
All right, so let's do the bottom 10, 41 through 50 right now. So Tyler Toffoli was number 50. I think we agree that Toffoli belongs on the list.
Yeah.
Next up was Bob Nevin. You said you want to remove Bob Nevin. That means Eddie Joyal moves down to 49.
He's out. Yeah.
Corrigan and Camilleri are not in there. We'll include Felix Potvin for now.
All right.
And again, to be clear, part of the reason I included Felix Potvin was, I guess we'll have the goalie conversation now. There's 3 obvious goalies on the list: Quick, Vachon, and Rudy.
Yeah.
And then after that, you're down to Lassard, Potvin, and Storr. And after that, I really don't think there's any point in including, as much as I love Stefan Fiset.
Yes, I have one goalie that I'll talk about at the end.
Okay.
That will get either number 50 or a very honorable mention.
All right.
But I'm not crazy about, not that I'm not crazy about, look, I love him, but I don't think Storr, look, he was.
The only reason I included him is numbers. And after listening back to it, it's amazing what 7 years of perspective will do, right? Because my attitude now that wasn't there in 2017 is I kind of don't care about numbers, because numbers just sort of mean that the team wasn't very good, and somebody had to play the games. Good. What's that?
Yeah.
Well, but I mean, like for most of the team's history up until around 2007, it was just it just didn't have a very strong record. And so a guy like Jamie Storr, I think I had originally on the list because he's 5th in franchise wins at 85.
I mean, that's actually, they had a couple of really good teams, where they won. They didn't go anywhere, but they had teams where they won the division or had over 100 points with the Triple Crown line years.
Yeah, but Jonathan Quick is a real franchise goalie.
No, there's only 3 franchise goalies.
Vachon was a real franchise goalie, but he only played half the career that Jonathan Quick did here in LA before he left. Yeah. And Kelly Rudy, same thing, came here, I wouldn't argue he's a real franchise goalie, but he was a real good goalie.
Well, he played in a, they made it to the Cup.
Yeah, so he had one strong playoff run, but the rest of, but 360 games, and then after that, Lassard played 240 games, but only 192. Storr played 205 games, only 185. Fiset 200 games, but only 180. And Potvin was here for 136. But Potvin was, came in, played hot, and then left.
Yeah. So I'm with you, your original you.
Yeah.
And I'm not really a numbers guy.
Sure.
Because, over the years, there have been times in the NHL when, people were scoring 500 goals, and then, 8 years later, the top goal scorer has 20, right? And so it's really difficult to sort of just go by numbers, because the league ebbs and flows in terms of numbers and what they count and all that stuff, or overtime. So I don't really care about numbers. So I think, goalies, unfortunately, and I played goalie, 3 franchise goalies is about it for me.
Yeah, that's fine.
And then I have one goalie that I will give an honorable mention to, but I won't say it till the end.
Is it Martin Jones?
No.
Okay. All right. No offense, Martin Jones.
I thought about Martin Jones, but
I'm sure you did.
And Bernier. but the thing about Bernier and Jones is they were probably the next 2 best goalies, but they never really played because they were backups.
Yeah.
So they're not that important to the franchise.
All right. So I have then in this iteration the bottom 10 in no particular order, and I'm not worrying about ranking as much as I did last time.
Okay.
Toffoli, Eddie the Jet Joyal,
yeah,
Glenn Murray, I'm going to include Potvin and Lassard, but that's it. Matt Green, Trevor Lewis, Kyle Clifford, Adrian Kempe, and Adam Deadmarsh, and we need one more name for the bottom 10.
Who do I have? Well, there's Gaborik.
Ooh.
And Belanger.
Oh, okay. I lean more towards Belanger than Gaborik, because as important as Gaborik was in the moment, overall, I don't know if I don't know.
But see, this is where I say if you win a cup, then that supersedes almost anything. Because that's the whole point of this exercise, not yours and my exercise.
Sure.
The exercise of having a league of professionals in various cities and all the sports, and the exercise is to win the cup. And so, and when you have a franchise that's been around this long, but they've only won the 2 cups and made one other, then those 3 teams, I guess that's what I was thinking is, look, if the players were key, I think maybe they jump ahead.
Okay.
They leapfrog.
It's just, I'm just amused because we did this in 2017, right? They had already won the cup. Gaborik was,
I know,
and we didn't think of it. And he only played.
I didn't think we got this far down.
Well, we kind of. I mean, I didn't give you as much input. I just gave you the list and added one name per, and then had you tell me which name was on it and which not.
I get that, but like I said, my memory, shaky as it might be, is that we were focused on ranking the top.
Most of the time was spent ranking the top 25. Yeah.
Yeah.
We kind of blew through the. So okay. So I'm gonna allow Gaborik. All right. And we're gonna go to Foley, Joyal, Potvin, Murray, Lassard, Green, Lewis, Clifford, Kempe, Deadmarsh, and Gaborik as the bottom 10. And again, we're not worrying so much about rankings. We're just sort of throwing names out.
I'm not sold on Lassard and Potvin, but
so let me explain why Potvin and Lassard.
All right.
Because we have those 3 goalies that are definite, but then Potvin was the goalie in the Frenzy on Figueroa, and was the goalie against Detroit that won that series. And for no particular reason, I want to point out that the Frenzy on Figueroa was not Game 6; it was Game 4, and everybody should know that. That'll mean something to about 5 people.
Right.
But Potvin came in right at the end of that season. I think he was acquired at the trade deadline in 2002. Or 2001, excuse me. Acquired at the trade deadline in 2001, was the goaltender for that upset of the Red Wings, took Colorado to Game 7 in 2001 and 2002. They lost in the first round in 2002.
Right.
And then I think he was traded away in 2003. I mean, he was here for a blink of an eye.
Yeah,
but in that blink of an eye, he provided, people talk, the critics of the franchise will say the Kings haven't won a playoff round in 10 years. And the defenders of the franchise will say, winning playoff rounds doesn't matter. It's only about the cup, to which I say the Kings didn't win a playoff round between 1993 and 2012.
Wow.
Except one, and that was that series against Detroit. And that series, until they won the cup, carried this franchise.
Yeah,
all right. The Miracle on Manchester and the Frenzy on Figueroa before the cup wins were the 2 things this franchise had going for it.
All right, I'll let him in.
So Potvin came in, like I said, 23 games at the end of the 2001 season. Then was the goaltender of record for the Frenzy on Figueroa and the upset of the Red Wings. Took Colorado to Game 7 in 2001, Colorado to Game 7 in 2002, played 42 games in 2002 and 2003, and that was the season where all the injuries started happening. And I don't blame him for not being good, and then they let him go to Boston, and then his career was over. So that's why I have him on the list. And Lassard, sort of the same thing. Let me read the... Actually, I don't think they have an entry for Lassard in the... Let me see if I can find it real quick here.
Well, he predates us, I think.
Yeah, second team All-Star, led the NHL in wins in 1980 and 81, and he was the goalie for the Miracle on Manchester. Now, again, they, as I said to you yesterday, they won the Miracle on Manchester 6-5 in overtime. Yeah. So it's not as if he had a huge hand in winning the Miracle on Manchester, but nonetheless, he was pretty sure he was the goalie of record.
All right.
Okay, so that's the bottom 10. Then the next 10, This is
By
where
the way,
yeah.
Whatever. I'm not sure about Glenn Murray, but I guess it was okay.
Glenn Murray was really good.
Yeah, I guess he was.
And he's played, and we also last time discussed the importance of post-playing careers.
Yes.
And Glenn Murray has been a part of the Kings franchise, so I think that cements it.
That's true. Okay. All right.
31-40. I don't think there's a ton of changes that need to be made because we added Green and Clifford already, right? Yes, we did. So Larry Murphy, Alec Martinez, Ian LePerriere, Jarrett Stoll, Sean O'Donnell, Jake Muzzin, Thomas Sandstrom, Joseph Stumple, Jimmy Carson, and Juha Viding.
Yeah, and I'm saying no Jimmy Carson.
You know what? That's funny. I had the exact same thought.
Yeah. No, he was here for a year or two, put up some good numbers, but totally forgotten, except that he was in the trade. But like I said to you on the phone yesterday, somebody had to be traded.
Yeah, and right? It's one of those wacky things where he put up decent numbers. He had 107 points in 1987-88. But so he ranks highly, right, in the all-time Kings numbers, I think, because of two strong seasons. But if I go to 1987-88, is that what year I said?
Yeah.
1987-88. Sorry about this. And I look at, he led the Kings with, I'm looking at goalies. That's not going to help me at all. Sorry, while I look this up. But like my point is the points were out of whack for a decade and a half. And so having a lot of points, in that time period doesn't make you more important than Trevor Lewis, for example.
No, absolutely not. I take him up. I don't really know who Juha White.
Juha Viding.
I know the name.
Yeah, he was.
But
I think he was important because he was Swedish at a time when Swedish players weren't prevalent.
Okay, that's not important.
Juha Viding, divine skater, top LA scorer, first 3 full years. That's all it says.
Well, okay, and Stumple.
No, we're not taking Stumple off.
Okay, all right. Well, then here's my really controversial one in that group.
Uh-huh.
That's Jake Muzzin.
I don't necessarily disagree with you, but if you're going to want to add some other guy, like if you want Gaborik, I think you have to have Muzzin. I don't think Muzzin has to be as highly ranked as he is, but
yeah. Well, okay, let's skip that for a while.
All right.
I mean, I know he was on a cup team, wasn't he? Yeah.
Yeah.
But he was one of those guys. It was like Jack Johnson. I always had trouble with Muzzin.
I think, and this is kind of why I wanted to do this exercise, because with the benefit of 7 more years, a lot of the active players in November of 2017, I don't remember. So Doughty won the Norris in 2015-16 playing alongside McNabb. I think Muzzin had played with Doughty in 13-14, probably 14-15. And then by 16-17, he was with Martinez. And I would argue that 16-17 was the first full season where we realized that Jake Muzzin might not be as important to Drew Doughty's success as everybody thought he was. Which is not to say that Jake Muzzin wasn't a very good player, but I was fascinated in 16-17 with the fact that Muzzin and Martinez, if you go back and look, and I just did double check this a couple of days ago because I'm a lunatic, that pairing, Muzzin and Martinez, were fancy stat darlings and actual stat, not so great. Like actually literally the worst pair in actual goals against per minutes played. But Corsi and Fenwick and expected goals against, they were dynamite. And I remember getting in fights with somebody on the hockey analytics team because they would say, stop pointing it out. You're riling up the fans. And I would say, I can't help it. It's fascinating. Everything that the fancy stat movement tells us should make this pair great is not coming true. They're actually giving up goals at an unbelievable rate. And I don't know how much that had to do with Quick being out with an injury and how much that had to do with Budaj not being able to make easy saves on turnovers that Jake Muzzin would create by trying to pass the puck directly up the center of the ice. At any rate, I think Muzzin was more highly rated in the summer of 2017 when this list presumably would have been put together. Than he is today.
And I think subsequently, he's a decent player. Nothing wrong with him.
He's a very good player.
I don't know if he's I don't know if he's the top 50 king, maybe, but that's just like, but I wouldn't say, okay, take him out. I'd say put him aside.
Okay.
But you're not going to let me take out Stump. Okay. All right.
Yeah. Stumple's
But I
staying
mean,
in.
the rest of the lists are pretty solid. I can't think of really anyone in the top 25 that, except for maybe Ziggy Palfy.
Well, so I'm going to split 21 through 30 into two groups of 5.
Okay.
Because the 25 through 30 is Jay Wells, Alexander Frolov, Marty McSorley, Bob Berry, and I forget what Murdoch's first name even is. I didn't write it down.
Bob
Murdoch.
Yeah.
And Bob Berry, Bob Murdoch,
number...
and Jay Wells have unfortunately played in a time when I don't remember them. And I think you and I both agreed in 2017 that Alex Frolov, although he put up a lot of points in career context, I don't ever think about Alex Frolov.
I don't either. He was, and it's not, that he was one of those guys, I guess, happens a lot. He just never could live up to the expectations.
Yeah.
So maybe that's not fair, but he just wasn't nearly as good as we were being sold at the time. And my memory is that at the time we were being sold a lot of that.
And so he's a perfect example. Yeah, he's a perfect example where if I said to you, how many, where does he rank in terms of franchise games played?
Yeah, I have no idea.
I think you'd be stunned to learn that it's 24th.
Huh, I am stunned.
Yeah. And if we're looking at how many points he scored in a team context, he is 15th overall in points scored in LA Kings history.
Wow.
Now, part of that is because a lot of the best play, I don't know how many points. Well, Drew Doughty has more points than he does, but you know what I mean? He's a forward, so defenseman, Matthias Nordstrom probably has fewer points than he does.
How many points does Frolov have?
Frolov had, where did he go? I just lost him. 381 points in 536 games. But Ziggy Palfy had fewer points than him. Adrian Kempe currently has fewer points than him. Granato had fewer points. Curry had fewer points. Tyler Toffoli had fewer points. Stumple, Justin Williams, Thomas Sandstrom. Part of it is because he just played longer than anybody else.
Well, yeah, that's...
And because he came in at a time when the team was actually fully rebuilding.
Right.
And where guys like he and Camilleri and O'Sullivan and Kopitar and Brown, they brought in a bunch of young kids, and those kids were allowed to just play and get points for 6 or 7 seasons, whereas Jimmy Carson was traded after 2.5 or something, came back later.
Right. See, I like Frolov, but I really only have one real memory or memories, but they're all the same memory. And that's
the wraparound.
His constant, attempt at wraparound that virtually never worked. And, so I just think, well, okay, I get it. He was good, and obviously put up points, but I don't know. I wouldn't put him. If his name were on this list, I would have never. I'd rather put Belanger.
I had totally forgotten, and this came up, I don't know, a year or two ago. I was looking at his stats and his career, and I was like, oh my God, he was on the team that made the playoffs in 2009, 2010 that lost to Vancouver in the first round.
Right.
I had completely forgotten that he came into the league in 2002, and he was on the Kings until 2010.
Right.
I was like, wow, I totally forgot. He played here for 8 years, and I completely forgot about him.
Yeah, no, I mean, he didn't quite live up to expectations, but actually he was really good, and he scored a really big overtime goal, and he was great. I mean, I think they were hoping he would turn into something a little better, but I would take him over Frolov.
I think that Dean Lombardi obviously is an incredible general manager and won the King the Stanley Cup twice, so we owe him that, all blah, blah, blah. But I've been listening to a lot of Lombardi interviews and reading a lot of Lombardi articles recently, and just, in an effort to try and remember 2014 for reasons that will become obvious soon. Dean Lombardi read or tried to read Crime and Punishment in an attempt to better understand Alex Frolov.
Really?
Yeah. And I remember reading that and thinking, wow, maybe this guy wasn't the genius that we all thought he was. Like, what Alexander Frolov, born in 1982, might have in common with the, Russian mentality that wrote Crime and Punishment by Dostoevsky. I don't know. I don't even know what year that was written. But like the idea that reading Crime and Punishment would somehow give you better insight into the mentality of a Russian player born in 1982. I don't know, man.
Well, I don't think anybody ever figured it out, and they never rid him of constantly trying wraparounds that didn't work. And that's my only memory of him. I remember liking him and everything.
Yeah.
And, he was, at the time, like you say, they were in a rebuilding. But as you realize later, it's like, okay, Kopitar and Brown were the real deal.
Yes.
And Sullivan, I know, had, all kinds of...
Yeah, O'Sullivan, Frolov, Camilleri, Johnson, Parse, I guess.
Parse, yeah. And the only one there, in terms of skill, is Sullivan probably, might have been one of the more skilled guys. Unfortunately, he had a tough go.
Yeah.
And so, he had a sort of a career that was not what it could have been. But you sort of look back, okay, yeah, Frolov, Camilleri. No, we were lucky. Kopitar and Brown came out of that group.
Yeah.
And that's pretty incredible. And the rest of them are forgettable for me.
Yeah. Incidentally, Crime and Punishment, written in 1866, right? Published in 1866. Dean Lombardi thought it was a productive project to read that book in the hopes to better relate to a player born in 1982. But whatever.
That's funny. All right. So I would put in Belanger for one over Frolov.
Okay. I love Eric Belanger, so I got no problem with that.
Yeah. And, gosh, there's so many. I know you laughed when I said Jitnik and Sador, but...
Yeah, we're not putting that. Sorry.
They were good.
I know.
All
right. So then the other five in that 21 to 30 grouping.
Well, again, my only thing would be Wisnowski.
Right. So it's Justin Williams, Tony Granato, Jeff Carter, Lubomir Wisnowski, and Yari Curry.
Yeah. And look, they're all, I've got no fight with any of them.
Yeah.
It's not that Wisnowski wasn't really good. He was. And, he was involved in the trade that was one of the best trades ever. But that might tell you. But I don't know. Is he one of the most important or top kings ever? Nah.
So it's one of those wacky things again where it's like, he's 25th in most points scored by an LA King.
Wisnowski?
Yeah.
It's 25th?
Yeah. But again, it's one of those things where the top four guys have more than 1,000 points. Gretzky has more than 900. Nichols and Brown have more than 700. Goring and Doughty have more than 600. And everybody else has less than 500 points. And once you get past Blake, Fox, Simmer, and Murphy, everybody has less than 400 points. So,
How many does Wisnowski have?
279 in 499 games.
I mean, it's not bad, but...
It's a lot of this has to do with the fact that until 2005, this franchise just didn't have a very good history.
Yeah. And I'm not saying he wasn't very good, because he was. Would I rank him at 22 in the Kings? I think Jitnik was better.
Well, keep in mind, you want to add some cup winners, so we need to.
That's true. Yeah,
because I would have put Justin Williams. So I redid that in 2017. We redid that 5-player chunk. We redid the order.
Right.
Okay.
You're right. I see my list. Willie Mitchell and Scuderi they should be in there somewhere.
So I think you can only keep one of them, and I think it has to be Mitchell.
Why can't I only keep one of them? Why do I have to
because Scuderi was gone by 2014.
Yeah, but boy, he okay, but Willie Mitchell for sure.
I agree, and here's why. Willie Mitchell played in 3 seasons for the LA Kings.
Yeah.
2010 and 11, he played 57 games and 6 games in the playoffs. 2011, 2012, he played all 20 games in the playoffs. And then he missed 2012-13 with injury. Then he played 2013-14 again, and they won the Cup. So 2 out of the 3 seasons he was here, they won the Cup. And in the summer of 2014, they let Willie Mitchell sign with the Florida Panthers. And then in October of Halloween of 2014, the incident with Voinov happened.
Right.
And I remember thinking at the start of that season, losing Willie Mitchell is going to be huge. And then once they lost Voinov as well, suddenly your entire second pair was gone.
Yeah.
And that was the first time that I started thinking about the importance of depth and how, I think that the reason the Kings never, sort of were able to climb the mountain again after 2014 is because Mitchell and Voinov were an unbelievably good second pair.
Yeah.
And what really made the Kings better than everybody else for that 3-year window is that Jeff Carter and Mike Richards were the top line players on a franchise that made it to the Cup in 2010. And they were the depth players for the Kings, right? Penner had made it to the Cup final, I think. He had won it in 2007.
Right. And wait, Mike Richards is not on this list. Did we forget to put him in?
We can if you'd like to.
Well, I never liked him at all, but I was thinking about it. And I was at least by the players themselves at the time, that everyone said he was incredibly important.
Yeah.
And he did come over, and because of him, they got Carter, maybe. And I think it probably helped a lot. And now, they win the Cup. So, yeah, I was never a big fan of his, but look, they did win 2 Cups and made it to a conference final, and supposedly, and, according to everyone, he was a big part of that.
Yeah.
Whether I liked him or not.
Well, so we will add him to the list, but I'll just say again, for that 2012 team, Mark Yannetti always likes to say people never figured out what it was that the Kings were doing, and they think it was about size and this, and maybe that was one of it. But he always says there's like 3 things that we had, and people have sort of figured out one of them, but they never figured out the other 2. And I always just look at it and go, okay, Stoll and Green, Cup final, lost. Penner, Cup final, won. Scuderi, Cup final, won. Richards, Carter, Cup final, lost. Williams, Cup final, won. Mitchell had been, plagued by injuries and had never, he played 18 games with the Minnesota Wild. I think they made it to the conference final that year and lost to the Ducks. So it's like the depth of the Kings team was a bunch of guys who had played first and second line or first and second pair roles on other teams.
Yeah.
And those players were brought in to surround Kopitar, Doughty, Brown, and whoever else was young on the team at that time. I don't even remember.
All right. Well, I say take out either Wells or Murdoch and Frolov and put in Richards and Mitchell.
Okay, I'm fine with that.
All right.
So then we move on to 11 through 20. And this is where we start to, we're not taking anybody off, but we start to tinker with rankings.
Right.
So number 20 is Jim Fox. And when I went back and re-listened to our 2017 episode, we talked about moving him up, but we never went back and revisited it. So he just stayed at number 20. Mike Murphy, Kelly Rudy, Mark Hardy, Zygmunt Palffy. We switched Charlie Simmer and Steve Duchesne in rankings. Matthias Nordstrom, Dustin Brown, and Rogie Vachon. We moved Vachon and Brown into the top 10.
Yeah.
And we moved Goring and somebody else down, but I've neglected to write down who that other person was. So I think I might have. There might have been some clerical errors. We might have wound up with 52 players on the top 50 list.
But now is where you get, and this is what my memory is of what we did last night. Now it's like, well, are we saying who are the best players, or who are the most important players to the franchise?
Well, I don't think we're doing best because
top 50 players, which doesn't tell you what he means.
Right.
By top. So I think of it as who are the most important players, because trying to figure out who's the best player. Okay, well, then you go Gretzky. Even though maybe while he was with the Kings, he wasn't the best. I don't know. Maybe that was Dion.
So I think we're going by important or whatever version of that word you want to do. In which case, I would move Mark Hardy to number 20, and I would move Jim Fox up.
Yeah,
and a lot of that has to do with Jim Fox's broadcasting career.
But that's fine. He's been incredibly important to the franchise.
Right.
I would move Nordstrom down. I don't know that he was.
So this is where I started putting my picks in for this year.
Yeah.
At 11, I had Vachon. At 12, I had Goring. At 13, I had Fox. At 14, I had Palffy. At 15, I had Nordstrom. At 16, I had Simmer. And then 17, Murphy. 18, Rudy. And I again have left somebody out and lost where they might go. Oh, Duchesne. I have Duchesne after Rudy because Duchesne's first tour of duty. It's like Duchesne and Hardy were both really impressive when they played on a Kings team that wasn't any good.
Yeah, my memory of Duchesne is he played for a couple of years. He was great. Went away, came back, and wasn't very good. So I don't know why he's ranked so high.
Because when he was here the first time, 86 through 91, he was really good.
Yeah, but we've had a lot of really good players. I wouldn't count him as very important to the franchise. Like I'd be tempted to take him out. I mean, at this point, is he? I don't know. I don't know.
I told this story 7 years ago on the episode. I'm going to tell it again just because it's one of my favorite stories. Sean Pronger got traded to the Kings when the team was very bad. It was like the end of the 80s. I think it was the 98 season maybe. So traded... where is it? Why is it not? Yeah, okay. February 12th, 1999, traded from the New York Rangers to LA Kings for Eric Lacroix. And he wrote a book, and in the book he tells the story of coming to the Kings. The Kings are not very good. This is the 98-99 season. They had made the playoffs before and gotten swept by the St. Louis Blues. They missed the playoffs this season, so Sean Pronger gets traded to the Kings, and the team is struggling, and Captain Rob Blake calls a closed-door team-only meeting, tells everybody, you need to write down on a piece of paper why this team isn't winning. And Sean Pronger goes up to him and says, I just got here. I don't know anybody. I haven't been with the team. Don't make me do this. Like, I don't know why. And Rob Blake says, don't worry. And also it's the third team that Sean Pronger played on that season.
Right.
And Rob Blake says, don't worry. It's anonymous where everybody writes down on a piece of paper, throw it in the hat, and then we pull them out. So don't worry about it. Just write something. Who cares? Nobody will know. So Sean Pronger writes something like need to get pucks in deep, need to play 200 feet, 60 minutes, whatever. So they go around the room. They all put the pieces of paper in the hat, and then Rob Blake in the team meeting at the front of the team pulls a piece of paper out of the hat, and it says, the reason we're losing is Steve Duchesne, and Ray Ferraros had signed his name to the note. So according to Ray Ferraro, Steve Duchesne was the reason they were no good in 98-99. So I don't know if that takes away from his points, but
I wouldn't actually have him now that I look at it. I would never rank him in the top 20.
All right, but he's top 50.
He might be top 50.
I mean, honestly, I would have taken Larry Murphy off too, even though Larry Murphy had an unbelievable Hall of Fame career as a King.
I don't think Larry Murphy needs to be on any list. And I think, what were the other names that you had down at the bottom here? Kempe, Trevor Lewis. Have we added them yet?
Yeah.
I put in, Deneau.
Oh, okay. I'm all for adding Phil Deneau.
Yeah.
But he's only played 3 seasons here, so I'm not really like...
I think I put Deneau in over Duchesne.
Really? I'd have to actually sit down and think about that one for a while.
Yeah. I mean, I know it's hard because it's a long time ago.
Well, there's also things like Steve Duchesne is 33rd in games played.
Okay.
So, I don't know how important that is, but it's one of those things. There's so many guys between 20 and 60 where you go, oh wow, Larry Brown is 49th in games played. Like I don't even know. I don't even know who Larry Brown is, but he's up there on the list.
No, and how many games did Armstrong play?
385. He's 42nd.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It's like, but he's not on the list. And
sure.
It's like, to me, I think I'd almost put Armstrong over Duchesne. He's not as good a player, but he was a guy that, look, the guy gave everything he had.
Yeah.
Like he you know what I mean? So at that level, and he's still with the team. So I mean, at some level, I'd put Armstrong.
Well, that would have been a pick for 40 through 50. But now we're going to move into the top 10 because this is where the meat of the conversation comes, and we're already 50 minutes into this thing. So,
okay, yeah.
The top 10. I'm just going to read the top 10 as picked by the author of the list, and then the top 10 that we picked in 2017. Because my list is totally different than it was in 2017. According to the magazine, it's Gretzky, Dion, Doughty, Robitaille, Blake, Kopitar, Nichols, Quick, Taylor, and Goring in the top 10. Our list was Robitaille, Dion, Blake, Taylor, Brown, Kopitar, Gretzky, Doughty, Quick, and Vachon. And this is the real reason I wanted to redo the list. I have Kopitar now as number 1.
Yes, you said that to me.
Yeah.
And I would not have Kopitar number 1.
Because you'd have Brown number 1.
Well, I would have Brown or Robitaille. Not going by who's the better player. Obviously, it's Kopitar.
Sure.
But in terms of, longevity and incredible career and importance, Robitaille he's almost should be above the list, right?
So can I give you my reasons for my list and you can agree or disagree with them?
Sure.
So I have Kopitar as number 1. And the reasons I think are fairly obvious. Captain of the team, won the Stanley Cup on 2 separate occasions. He leads the league in all these different, or the team, in all these different categories. So he's the most games played, 4th in goals, and he's not much of a goal scorer, but he'll pass Dave Taylor for 3rd eventually. I think he's he's 1st in assists. He's 2nd in points. He's 3rd in plus minus. He's, I don't know how far down the list he is in penalty minutes, but for a guy who's played, 18 years on the same team, he's pretty far down the list. Points per game as a King, he's actually pretty far down the list, so we'll ignore that. Game-winning goals, he's 2nd overall, 2 behind Robitaille in game-winning goals, and more importantly, drafted by the Kings and has played not just his entire career, but an entire long career, right? When all's said and done, he might wind up having played 20 seasons for the Kings.
Yes. So I would never argue with you that he's the best player.
20 years as arguably the best player on the team in almost all of those years.
Yes, I like I say, I have no argument that he's the best player. I concede best player. But the guy who was the captain when they won the Cup, who also played whatever many 18 years, and all as a King, and who came in as a rookie with a certain subset of skill, and over the years, Kopitar's just good. He's just a great player.
Yeah.
Brown actually changed his game and grew and figured out how to and became a better player, which is a pretty good trick that not a lot of players can do. But he's the captain where they, when they won the Cup, he was the captain, and I think he was a great captain.
Okay, so your number one pick is Brown. Now he's been gone a couple of years. So, and then for me, I think when we did that, I had Brown number 1, but then I was thinking about it when you called me the other day, and I thought, well, you know what? Robitaille is, like, if there was ever a King, he's Robitaille. Well, I think that's why we had him number 1, and it's why I have him. So do you want to put Brown as your number 1 pick?
Well, I know this is cheating. I would put Robitaille Brown as 1A, 1B.
Well, you got to pick one. You got to pick one as one and one as two.
Well, then I will change from before, and I will say Robitaille. I think he transcends anything.
Okay.
Right.
So that's why I have Robitaille number 2. Because I think there's some guys that just have a je ne sais quoi about them. And Robitaille was that, obviously, listen, I own a bunch of Robitaille jerseys. His poster hung in my bedroom and now hangs in my office.
I don't think, it is him that got you really hooked on hockey.
Yes.
But I don't think you're alone. I think he single-handedly made hockey fun and kids want to follow the King.
Yeah.
He was really good, right?
Yep.
On top of that.
Listen, until Alexander Ovechkin came along, he was the highest scoring left winger in NHL history.
Exactly. And now, obviously, he's the president. So his presence in the Kings organization is unparalleled.
Agreed.
So I'll say number 1. I would put Brown 2, Kopitar 3.
Okay, so you've got Kopitar 3.
Not a big fight.
But I've got, so I don't have Brown at number 3. Otherwise, because you and I both agree that Kopitar and Robitaille are top 3, but I have Kopitar 1, Robitaille 2. I have, and I moved him up in my estimation. I have Jonathan Quick number 3, and the primary reason is that goaltenders are supremely important, and Jonathan Quick is just unparalleled, unquestionably the best goaltender in franchise history.
That is true. That's okay.
And his performance in 2012, it's been talked about to death, but his performance in the regular season of 2012 and in the playoffs of 2012, he set records for performance in in the playoffs by a goalie that still haven't been eclipsed.
All right, let me ask you this.
Yeah.
Would we be in agreement that the top 5, this is what I would say, are Robitaille, Brown, Kopitar, Quick, and Dion?
No.
No?
I have Doughty ahead of Dion.
Yeah.
And that's just because I'm old. I'm young enough that I never saw Dion play. My memory of Dion is just hearing when he retired, he was the second highest points total in the league behind Gordie Howe, and he was incredible in the Triple Crown. But I don't have any emotional firsthand impression of him.
Okay, so that's where our age, because I did watch him, and he was really, truly one of the greatest players ever.
Sure.
Not or Lemieux, Gretzky, and given how small he was, and that he was jettisoned out to LA at a time when that wasn't, a big selling point, what he was able to accomplish and do. And if you just go back and try and find some video, he was extraordinary. He was an extraordinary player that if he had stayed on Detroit or in Montreal, he would be, I think people would be talking about him as top 10 ever.
I believe it, but again, when we referenced earlier the British bands in the that just sort of get pushed out by history, just for me.
No, I get it.
And it's funny, I say I'm too young because I'm 46, and when I go to work and I work with a bunch of people in their mid to late 20s and early 30s, I talk about myself as being old. But I started really paying attention to and being conscious of hockey in the late 80s. And, he was done by then. And now there's another 30 years of hockey history on top of that. So.
Yes. No, look, I totally understand. It's just that I did watch him.
Sure.
So I would put him in top 5. But, if you make him 6.
I have him 6 right behind Doughty.
Yeah. Yeah.
So is your top 6 then Robitaille, Brown, Kopitar, Quick, Dion, and Doughty?
Yeah, say that again.
Robitaille.
Yeah.
Brown.
Yeah.
Kopitar.
Yeah.
Quick.
Yeah.
Dion.
Yeah.
That's your top 5?
Yeah.
And then is Doughty number 6?
Yeah.
Okay. So you and I have the same top 6, just in a different order.
Yeah.
So then
yeah,
I have
look, and you know what? When you say that, I'm like, right. So Cassie and I were watching the Olympics, and I was trying to just not explain, but she was watching. I'm like, okay, so the first guy, he runs 10 seconds, and the guy who comes second, who you'll never remember for the rest of your life, runs it in 10.01.
Yeah.
Right? And the guy that came third ran in 10.02.
And the guy who finished fourth, who doesn't even get a medal. Yeah, you won't remember him today.
Yes. So that's what I'm thinking about these rankings. It's like, that's how close it is. And that's why you and I can say, well, you think that guy, I think this guy, and we're both right.
Well, this is why I don't generally like rankings, and I prefer to do tiers, because the reality is we'd probably have 12 or 13 guys on the top, on the first tier.
Absolutely.
But we're not doing it that way.
Yeah. No.
So then...
And look, if I'm still alive in another 7 years, we may change the list totally.
Probably. I mean, it's completely different from where we were 7 years ago. We had Robitaille, Dion, Blake, Taylor. The top four were guys that didn't win the cup.
Right.
And we had Quick at number 9, which I now have him at number 3. So there you go.
Yeah. No, because I think maybe over time I realized because maybe then we thought they'd win another cup.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know. Maybe we were dreamers.
Well, I remember around 2014-15-ish, I would say, like, listen, Joe Sakic only won the cup twice. Steve Yzerman only won it 3 times. Like, Mario Lemieux only won it on twice. And so, like, Anze Kopitar already has 2. And his career's only had this is gonna be awesome, and that was it. They got it too.
No, I mean that's it. To win, other than if you were on the Montreal Canadiens who won 5 in a row, or the Oilers, or the Islanders, it's hard pressed Sidney Crosby to tell you how good he is. Yeah. He's won it 3 times.
Yep.
And that's in this day and age, playing for the same team.
Yeah.
Like there are these guys. Now, saying all that and how important winning is. You know how I feel about what's his name from Boston that went to Colorado, and I think that started Ray Bork.
Yeah,
I've never liked that, and it started a thing now that I really don't like, which is, I want to go to a winner. It's like, I guess that's just the world we live in.
So one of the things that I wrote that I am the most proud of. Years ago, I wrote an article about the Ray Bork trade, or about the trade for the draft pick that became Ray Bork. Because the Kings had the draft pick that should have been Ray Bork. They traded the draft pick that was used to select Ray Bork.
Wow.
Yeah, it's terrible. In the article, I would always do final analysis, the benefit, the cost, the opportunity cost, the emotional cost, who's to blame, the legacy, and the silver lining of all the things I covered. And the silver lining, I wrote, Ray Bork's Stanley Cup win came when he was a member of the Colorado Avalanche, so it doesn't count. I was
there you go.
Pretty happy with that. It doesn't count. And Ray Bork being really happy and taking the cup to Boston and all of that was cheap. And everybody should be ashamed of being happy for it.
So, yes, absolutely. So, I know we're getting near the end, and I got to get cracking. But there's one player that I think goalie. And
hold on. Before we get to your mystery pick, do you have Gretzky at number 7? Because that's where I put him.
Yeah, that's fine.
And then I have Taylor, and then I have Nichols, and then I have Blake.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Good enough. All right.
Who's
your mystery goalie?
Now, my mystery goalie, and I think when I tell you it is, you'll know exactly why. And it has nothing to do with how good or bad he was.
Uh-huh.
But Rick Knickel.
Get out of here.
Is the single greatest name in Kings history. And needs to have a special place. So you got a guy, Rick Knickel.
Rick Knickel is not going on the list.
That's like, there needs to be a special list for
those who don't know, Rick Knickel played all of 14 games in the NHL. All of them with the LA Kings. Although, have you looked at his career page?
No.
Like, he entered the IHL in 1979-80. He was drafted in 1979 by the Buffalo Sabres. He played from 1979 to 1997.
Wow.
But only played 14 games in the NHL. But
Ricky Nichols, they were very promising. He's kind of like not quite as good maybe, but kind of a Jack Campbell, right?
Well, no, he's the guy who finished fourth in the Olympics, that ran a 10.04 or whatever.
Yeah.
Because look at this. He played for the Muskegon Mohawks, the Erie Blades, the Rochester Americans, the Flint Generals, the Sherbrooke Canadians, the Saginaw Generals, the Flint Spirits, the Peoria Rivermen, the Fort Wayne Comets, the Flint Spirits, the Albany Choppers, the Springfield Indians, the San Diego Gulls, the LA Kings, the Phoenix Roadrunners, the Detroit Vipers, the Las Vegas Thunder, and the Milwaukee Admirals.
Wow.
Yeah.
No, that's impressive. Now, I also was thinking that there are people that maybe shouldn't be on the list. Maybe they should. But, you look back and you go, hey, Smolinski, Kudelski,
Yep. Well, I don't know about that.
Casper, was that his name?
Steve Casper?
Yeah, Steve Casper.
Yep.
Chuck scored that incredibly important goal.
Sure.
And so these guys are important. And in terms of the Kings' history, I don't know about, not a bit Chuck was. And then, so, there are all these guys, but that's a pretty good list, I guess.
Yeah. And so just going back over it real quick. We've got, in no particular order in the top six, Kopitar, Robitaille, Quick, Brown, Doughty, and Dion. Gretzky, Taylor, Nichols, and Blake round up the top 10, which means, by the way, that Butch Goring got bumped to the next 10.
Look, he was great, but it's a tough,
Listen, you got four cup winners and six, and a couple guys with retired jerseys, and what are you going to do?
Yeah. Honestly, the funny thing is, if I wanted to put Goring in the top 10, the guy that I would take out is Gretzky.
Yeah, but I think you kind of have. So the Kings have seven retired jerseys, plus Kopitar, plus Quick, plus Doughty.
Right.
That's your 10.
And they will be retired.
Yeah, exactly. So that's your top 10. Then we've got so then we've got Goring, Nordstrom, Fox, Duchesne, Simmer, Palffy, Hardy, Rudy, Mike Murphy, and
Vachon.
We have him in the top 10.
Oh, we did. Sorry,
he bumped Goring out.
Right.
So, and then we've got all those names to add. Then Curry, Wisniewski, Carter, Granato, Williams, Wells, McSorley, Murdoch, Barry, Trevor Lewis, because we're losing Frolov. You wanted to add Belanger. Veeding, Carson, Stumple, Sandstrom. Maybe we're taking Muzzin out. We're adding Clifford, O'Donnell, Stoll, LePerrier, Martinez. Maybe we swap Murphy for Green?
Green absolutely needs to be on that list somewhere.
Yeah, Gaborik, Deadmarsh, Kempe, Clifford. Oh, we added Clifford and Lewis. So we wound up with less than 50 names because we took way too many guys out. But anyway. I think that's a pretty good conversation, even if it's not a perfect list.
Yeah. There's no way to make a perfect list.
Well, but I think I lost track of how many names we were taking out and how many we were putting in between the original article, the notes I made listening to the replay, and the notes I made in preparation for this one. I've totally lost track of the plot.
Did you put Dwight King in and Belanger?
I did put Belanger. I didn't put Dwight King. I love putting Dwight King in, but I think you'll get a lot of pushback from some people. Incidentally, somebody out there, King's Media member, who I've already subtweeted in my speech, one King's Media member, I'll do it again. The person out there who says number Trest to number 74, knock it off. It's not cute, it's not funny, and it's wrong. That, again, only like 5 people will understand that. But one thing we did before I let you go is in 2017, we made a real quick roster for like the top roster, spots. We had Quick and Vachon as the number 1 and number 2 goalies.
Yes.
Our we only went top 4 defensemen, but I tried to fill it out with a top 7. Doughty, Blake, Nordstrom, Duchesne, Wisniewski, Hardy, and Wells. You want to replace one of those guys with like Willie Mitchell, for example?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd replace Duchesne, or I don't know who were the? Actually, once you get past Doughty and Blake.
Yeah, well, exactly. But I'm going to just for giggles, I'm going to make Nordstrom and Blake a pair because they were a pair.
Yeah.
I'm going to say Mitchell and Doughty because Mitchell played left and Doughty played right.
I would put Matt Green also as one of your sixth guy.
Okay, so I'll take Hardy and Wells out, and I'll say Wisnowski and Green. I know you're on the fence about Wisnowski, but I'm not.
I would take Wells out.
Okay, so I took Wells and Hardy out, and I've got Nordstrom, Blake, Mitchell, Doughty, Wisnowski, and Green.
Yeah, okay.
All right, and then I only went 3 lines on the forwards. Robitaille, Dion, and Brown is what we came up with last time.
Okay.
Simmer, Kopitar, and Taylor.
Okay.
Nichols, Gretzky, and Palffy.
Pretty good.
And if you want to make like a 4th line, I would say maybe Clifford, Lewis, and Deadmarsh.
Oh, you're a lot higher on Clifford than I ever.
All right, well, all right.
I think there's a ton of guys.
Dwight King, Trevor Lewis, and Adam Deadmarsh?
Yeah, if you want to do cup people. But, I mean, there's Kempe.
Sure, but I mean, I'm just thinking of like 4th line type players. There's not going to be a ton. There's not going to be like a ton of 4th line top, 4th line players on a top 50 list. So
you're right. Okay, I see. Yeah. So Trevor Lewis.
Yeah.
Who else did you have?
Deadmarsh.
Yeah. He wasn't really a 4th line, but okay.
No, he wasn't. But for the purpose of this imaginary exercise.
Yes. And who was the 3rd?
You know what? I forgot Clifford. Guys like LaPerriere and Stoll could go on the list.
Yes, exactly. I would put them in over Clifford any day.
All right, so I'll put Stoll at center. Deadmarsh occasionally played left wing, so we'll put Lewis at right wing. So the 4th line is Deadmarsh, Stoll, and Lewis.
There you go.
All right. That's a pretty good roster.
Right. Pretty good.
Yeah.
All
right. All right. Dad, thanks for joining me.
You're welcome. My pleasure.
Have fun training your new puppy, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks.